When I logged into my first Minecraft world 10 years ago, there was no sprinting and the only mode of transportation was a minecart. Today, I can make this video from inside a room in the first class of a moving slime block train. And if you look around, you'll see that this room is fully furnished like a room in a regular Minecraft house. But if we look on the outside, you'll see that it's part of a giant slime block flying machine with 3 different cars and an engine moving between the station on the left and the station on the right. And what you see in front of you is the result of a project to make a reusable slime block flying machine that actually looked plausible on the inside, like something you would actually use and ride around in inside a Minecraft universe. And the reason I wanted to do this was so that it could create experiences for people as part of an adventure map or a PvP minigame. And so before I get to the technicalities of how it works, I want to show you all a little bit of the experience that I think a machine like this could create, even if no one ever recreates this. So sit back, get some popcorn, and I'm excited to present the heist. Well, I hope you all enjoyed that little video there. I know it's a different style for the channel, but I just wanted to have some fun with this project since it took so many iterations from start to finish. As you can see here in my testing world, all the different versions of different parts of the train that are around. So now I'm going to talk a bit about the design process and what some of the challenges were that I faced in designing this and how it works the way it does. So to start with, I wanted to make sure that the different cars of the train actually looked good on the inside and held their shape when they were being pushed around, unlike some flying machines which fly apart into a laggy mess, and also it had to be able to move in 2 directions. What I realized this meant early on is that I was going to need pistons on either side of the car, like you see in this setup, so that whichever way the train was being pushed, it would push the cars together in one motion, and then the train would have to move itself along some other way, without slime blocks and sticky pistons being involved in the cars themselves. And the reason for this is that when the car moves forward, if it's in multiple pieces, you see in this example I've set up here, this car is just duplicated. If we have 2 segments, when the train moves forward at some point, a gap will open between them. And if you're standing on this, you'll fall through, and it looks ugly and glitchy if you're inside the car itself. So I landed on this sort of design here. Now initially I thought I could do a 3x3 space, and I think with honey blocks, which have been added since I started this project, it might be possible to do that. But I pretty quickly settled on a 2x2 design, and I realized that I would need to have sort of connector pieces between the trains, which would power the back pistons of one car and the front pistons of another, like you see in this setup. And then once I had this connector formed, you could duplicate it as many times as you want and make a train out of it, and hook it up to a 2-directional flying machine, which is pretty easy. As I started assembling the connectors and as I started developing the form of the connectors and trying to put them together into a train, I realized that I could space them differently and have different designs of the cars themselves. I could space them 12 blocks apart, which is the push limit for pistons, and have the longest cars possible, which might seem desirable at first. But the longer the cars are, the less you're actually able to put stuff inside of them. Because, as you see with the piston layout, we're not pushing any blocks inside because we want the blocks inside to be air where the player can move around. I don't want to fill them with open trap doors or fence gates like you sometimes have to do in slime block flying machines. So in order to put realistic components like walls and seats in, I needed to have slime blocks in the spaces I was pushing in the car that would then connect to blocks in them inside. But as you can see, this is going to add to the push limit of these pistons. This piston is now being asked to push 12 blocks in an 11 block space. And the more I want to fill up the inside of the car, the shorter the car should actually be. So after debating different lengths, I ultimately settled on the 8 blocks that you see in the final train. While this is short, it means that I'm able to put as much stuff inside the train as I want to. Once I had the final length though, I needed to connect these sort of joiners in the train buildup together. And this resulted in a problem, because I have this long flying machine, but it's not actually easy to turn it into a two-dimensional one. Let me show you what I mean with this example I built over here. So, in the most simple sense, this is kind of how the train looks. It's different sections connected together with sticky pistons and observers and hooked up to a flying machine in the front. But the problem is that in a two-directional flying machine, you need two different configurations. When you're going one way, the sticky pistons are pulling, which means that you want them to be directly next to the slime block, because when they move backward, a gap will open up and they'll be able to pull the slime block towards them. But when you're moving the flying machine the other way, the pistons actually need to have an air block in front of them and the other slime block at all times, because they're going to be moved into it, closing the gap, and then they're going to push it forward. And the problem is that when you try and push the machine forward, if there's no air gaps, you're actually going to exceed the push limit and your device is going to get stuck and go nowhere. So this sounds simple at first, but when you consider that these sections are going to be connected to cars and we're going to have pistons on either side of these cars, and then you need to change the spacing of the different parts of the containers and the pistons, the sort of parts of the train up top, like the cars and the joiners, actually start colliding together when the undercarriage spaces differently. Eventually, however, I was able to work this out. The solution came in the stations where the train reverses direction. What happened is basically that the station needs to have two components. The component on top is just a T flip-flop, which is hooked up to these pistons, which extend and become unmovable and stop the train. And the bottom is the interesting part, which is where we actually adjust the train's spacing. When the train comes in, the pistons on top catch it in whatever spacing it's in. So if it's going one direction, all the blocks are together, and if it's going the other direction, there's air blocks between all the sticky pistons and the components they're pushing. And then, when the operator flips this switch at the front where the fence gate is, we retract the pistons on top holding the machine in that configuration, and we actually go up along the underbelly of the train and trigger all these observers, which are looking upwards. And so in one direction, that means the train spaces out gradually as we run the observer updates along, and in the other direction, it means the train contracts. So we have the train shift its pattern deliberately with all these sort of set up at the train station, which is a pain to lay out and it looks a little chaotic, but ultimately it lets the train reverse or stop as many times as we want it to. So let me just show you really quickly what that looks like in the actual demo world that I built. At this station, the train is going to shift into a longer mode so that it can reverse. As you see on top here, the pistons are extended, holding the train in place, and on the bottom, the slime blocks and sticky pistons are together. And what we're going to do is make an air block here between the piston and the slime so that the train can run in the other direction. And as you see also, the pistons on the bottom are lined up with the observers, which is what's going to help us update the entire train and extend it in the form that we need it to be in. So, if I flip the switch here, this T flip-flop at the top is going to change, the pistons will all retract, and now you see the train getting longer. Because if you watch really closely, a pull switch went across the bottom there very quickly, and now we have the train extended, and as you can see, there's more space between the train cars and the piston pushers, but now if we update this fence gate, the whole train will run forward. And that's everything for today, guys. I hope you like the new style. This was definitely the longest project in terms of the number of hours in the game designing, the number of hours editing, and I'm just really happy to finally get this train project done, share with you something I've been working on for months, even before I started the channel. So I'd love it if you let me know what you thought of all the work with a comment down below, a like, a subscription, anything you feel like, and I will catch you all in the next one.